All right, people ask me all the time about sinkholes. There's sinkholes in Florida, there's sinkholes in the Tampa area, but what does that really mean? How does it actually affect people, and what can you do about it? Here we go. I'm Sam, and this is the Living in Tampa channel, where we make these videos for you about what it's like to live and move to Tampa. We're also a team of realtors, and we'd love a chance to earn your business. Call, text, or email anytime. So when I moved here in 2020, I heard some of this news about sinkholes. I heard people talk about them. I was jumping into real estate, and in real estate, you know, buyers and sellers are talking about this a lot. It is a thing that people are concerned with. But at first, I didn't know whether it's a big deal, a small deal. When you hear the word sinkhole, you think that sounds big. That sounds like the earth opened and ate a house. That's what it sounds like. And whenever we first moved here, we lived in this short-term rental off of Little Road in Newport Richey. And there was a big sinkhole just off Little Road, just by this restaurant. It was pretty big, just by Little and 54, this kind of newer developed area. And this sinkhole was probably 12 feet across and had like unknown depth. The whole area was like blocked off for a while. It's like, oh, that's kind of crazy. Like somebody could fall in there. I mean, it wasn't like bottomless, obviously, but there were parts of it where it was softer down there, parts of it where it was hard down there. And so they had to remediate that, right? And it was a big deal. But most of the time, it's not that intense. Most of the time, it's that the soil settled a little bit under the footer foundation on a house, and it caused a step crack in between the cinder blocks. And then somebody files a claim with their insurance, and they're like, oh yeah, it's a settlement issue. The soil has settled. That's what they call a sinkhole. That would also be called a sinkhole. So the word gets applied to the extreme cases and the very minor cases. So on an average, how big of an issue is this? It's very, very minor. You're gonna see listings occasionally, and we'll mention a few that I've seen recently that bring this up in the listing, that there is a settlement claim or there's a sinkhole claim on the property, and that needs to be considered. We'll talk about some of those details, but as a general statement, this is not a big deal. This is not like how, a storm, like flood water from the sky, not from like tide. Raining flood could affect all the houses. Sinkholes are not that broad. They're not gonna affect like every house. Now, if a whole development has very poor dirt work done, then it could affect that whole development, and there have been some cases like that. But that's not really an issue with Florida. That's an issue with developers doing poor work. That's happened occasionally, not very much at all. So what's the worst that could happen? Let's go with that. The worst that could happen is that one wall of your house just sinks. It just breaks off enough and then falls away. I've actually never seen that. I'm just trying to be, inflammatory to make a point. That's probably the worst. It's not like your whole house is gonna like sink off a cliff. Like you see these houses like falling off cliffs, you know what I'm talking about? Those memes where like the house is like the ground is literally moving, the house is falling down into an ocean off of a cliff. It's not like that. It's not like that's the sinkhole. But all of this operates on a bell curve, right? So on a bell curve, you have the bottom end, and then the average, and then the top end. So let's just say this is the range of sinkholes. This average range, where the vast majority of cases fall, is that a wall just shifted a little bit. There's a little bit of cracking in in between the cinder blocks, or maybe some of the drywall separated, and that taped seam kind of shows now and needs to be repaired. The thing is, in Oklahoma, this happens all the time from earthquakes, not from sinkholes. So I'm kind of used to this kind of thing. In Colorado, this happens too, just because of how much the temperature changes. The drywall will shift like that. But also in Florida, this just happens on cinder block homes because the joints fail eventually. Or maybe the soil does shift a little bit, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it's a sinkhole. So the average just being that slight shift, the far end of that being a massive insurance claim. So let's talk about a few scenarios. A client recently named Coy, he reached out and was like, hey, what about this address? What do you think of this place? This place is actually in West Chase. West Chase, the #1 suburb in all of Florida, according to you guys and your reviews on niche.com. In West Chase, There's a couple neighborhoods that are around flood water, like flood retention lakes. Sometimes the soil settles a little bit around those. Not often, but sometimes. And this specific one he was looking at, there had been a claim filed. The claim was not paid. The insurance company said, this is not a sinkhole. But because there was a claim filed, and because those step cracks in the wall and that separation of drywall on the ceiling was blamed on a soil settlement or a sinkhole, now that information has to be attached to that listing forever. We bought a house recently, newer place. I mean, not necessarily new. We lived in a 1962 house. We moved into a 1986 house, so we're still trending pretty old. Our house, the neighbor in the 90s had filed a claim for a sinkhole because their exterior wall, that's part of their garage, started to sink a little bit. They filed a claim, and then the news got around the neighborhood that so-and-so had a sinkhole claim and insurance paid them $150,000 to repair their house. So everybody in the neighborhood was like, oh my gosh, we're about to have sinkholes, we're filing claims. So now I go to buy my house and there's a settlement statement. And the settlement statement says a bunch of legalese BS. That's like, there was a claim. State Farm did not pay out a claim. No evidence was found. State Farm will no longer cover sinkholes for this property. Something like that. But that has to be attached to the listing forever. I read that, heard the story, and thought, this is garbage. It could have just been the builder of that house that, did something wrong in that exterior wall, or maybe it was just some of the concrete that failed. That's not so unheard of to where we blame insurance and we blame natural disasters like sinkholes on this thing. It's kind of an intense thing. So that disclosure had to be part of the thing. We had to know going in, this is a thing, blah, blah, blah. We got insurance, no problem. Our insurance is really affordable, actually. They don't cover sinkholes in the neighborhood because there was that previous broad claim of sinkholes in the neighborhood. Now insurance companies like, hey, we're not covering sinkholes over here. You guys don't have them. So that's the thing you have to deal with. I actually know an investor that's north of here. She's actually up in Spring Hill, which is a county north of where I am. It's in Hernando County. She, buys rental houses, rents them out. She specializes in sinkhole homes. Super interesting. And what do I mean she specializes in them? She sees them as an opportunity. So she buys them. Even if they have some kind of foundation issue, she gets it repaired. There's all kinds of things you can do. You have an engineer come out. They drive these big stakes in and then anchor the foundation to these stakes. There's a lot of things you do. Still very insurable. Even if there was a bad sinkhole, you get it remediated. You have an engineer check it every year. It's insurable, completely insurable, no problem. But these are hard to sell sometimes. So she buys them for cheaper and then she rents them out because the renters don't care. They don't even know. They don't even need to know. Super interesting thing. So people ask me about sinkholes all the time, and honestly, I just don't think they're worth worrying about. It's not as clear as flood zones. Yeah, flood zones are awful. Mostly because of the insurance that comes along with a flood zone if you do carry a mortgage and you have to carry flood insurance. But that doesn't mean it's going to flood all the time. It just means you have built-in costs. Now, if you live in an area that's prone to sinkholes, it doesn't mean you're going to have a sinkhole. It doesn't mean your insurance is more expensive necessarily. It means you might have to deal with it someday. But depending on where you fall on that bell curve, dealing with it probably isn't that big of a deal. It's probably not as big of a deal as you would imagine. I wouldn't want it to keep you from making the move to Florida that you dream of. So we've worked with a lot of people that have moved from across the country to the Tampa area. And this is one of those things that if it comes up, I usually say, hey, I don't think you should go into this situation on your first house in Florida. But now that I'm already on my second house in Florida, so my first house I made the flood zone mistake and had super expensive flood insurance. Now my second house, we've got a settlement claim. Maybe that'll be a mistake, and of course I will tell you if it turns into a mistake. But right now it feels like an opportunity. It feels like an opportunity to get the home we got for a little bit less, to be in the space we want. It just doesn't feel like a risk to me. It doesn't feel like a risk to me at all. What stories have you heard about sinkholes? I'm curious your perception. Obviously the news is going to exaggerate. We all know that. We all know that the news and that Facebook exaggerates these kind of things and promotes the most outrageous story to the top. I hope we know that. because the reality is a lot calmer, right? Like we look at the political landscape right now, the reality around us is quite a bit calmer than what the news portrays. So what do you guys think about sinkholes? Is it a big deal? Am I gonna lose my shirt on this house? Or is it just an opportunity? As always, we'd love to hear from you. I'd love to hop on a Zoom call and hear what you think about sinkholes or about whatever. I would love to help you make the move to this area. Sinkholes, flood zones, everything included. We'll make sure you're taken care of. We really will. We love to guide you through the process of finding the perfect place for you, and that perfect place is just different for everybody. So give us a call, text, or email anytime. Thanks for coming by.